Welcome to our distinguished guests, to our community members, to our leaders, to our military members, city staff, any council members who may be here, and of course, the family and the friends of Robert Manning Gray. I am Janelle Ford. I'm the communications director for the city of Killeen. So, former Mayor R.T. Polk, he proclaimed today as Robert Gray Day way back in 1942. It's a joy to see so many people who still come out to pause and take time to remember this true hero. So thank you for coming out. I'm going to start by introducing our garrison commander from Fort Hood, future will be Fort Cavazos, to come and give a few remarks, and he will be followed by our mayor. Thank you.
So I was looking around here for some notes, and there are none. So you let me down there. I'm just kidding. No, in all seriousness, I'm just going to say a couple of words here because number one, I have a great act coming up behind me with Mayor Nash-King that will give you the really what you're looking for. But it is an honor to be here. This is the second year in a row that I've been able to take part in this particular event, representing the great place, Fort Hood, as you said, soon to be Fort Cavazos. And as things change, we recognize that a lot of things stay the same. The most important things stay the same. And I'll point out that this airport was recently recognized by the United States Army in partnership with our installation and being one of the top partnership of this kind throughout the entire U.S. Army. So that right there shows the strength of our community, the strength of our bonds here, and there's no better way to celebrate those bonds than to come together and to honor a native son, Robert Gray. We have the family here, which got to speak to you fine people a little while ago. It was an absolute pleasure to see you again this year. And we often throw around the word hero. We throw around the word hero sometimes and probably a little too freely. But when we're talking about Robert Gray, I don't think we're exaggerating one bit. When you look at his historical contribution, the particular event that he took part in, was chosen to take part in, the Doolittle Raid during World War II, at a time when our confidence as a nation had been shaken by the attack at Pearl Harbor. That was the first gesture of defiance by our country in World War II. And had it not been for the brave pilots, the brave flyers that took part in that operation, who knows what our national psyche would have been? Who knows what our morale would have been? But what it certainly did, it sent a message, and it would not have been possible without men like Robert Gray. And so to have this airport and the connected and completely integrated U.S. Army Airfield, named after Robert Gray, have it named after that great individual is an excellent symbol of our community, of the legacy of service and sacrifice that really characterizes the Central Texas community and the United States Army. Again, it is a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm going to end my remarks there and yield the floor to Mayor Nash-King.
Good morning to everyone. It is indeed an honor and a pleasure to stand before you as we honor Robert Gray and his family. And as I read today's proclamation, please think about the legacy, what he has contributed not only to the military, but also to our community. He has made us proud. And with that, with his family, please come up. You all can come up. The city of Killeen, whereas Robert Bob Gray, a Killeen native and a brave soldier, participated in the Doolittle Raid and distinguished himself an American hero on April 18, 1942. Whereas Gray received his wings in 1941 when he was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Army Air Corps and quickly became a top B-25 pilot. And whereas Lieutenant Colonel James H. Doolittle selected Gray as one of the 80 crew members to participate in the famous Doolittle Raid 80 years ago to deliver the first strikes against Japan in World War II. And whereas Gray successfully completed his mission, but he died 6 months later in the China-Burma campaign. And though his service was short, his legacy remains in American history. And whereas Gray is part of Killeen's history, and we continue to honor him to this day with the Robert Gray Army Airfield on Fort Hood. Gray Street is downtown Killeen, and with a historical display and bronze statue at the Killeen-Fort Hood Regional Airport. And whereas former Mayor R.T. Polk proclaimed April 18th, Bob Gray Day in Killeen for the duration of time in order, flags will fly from every socket and flagpole in the community. And the day will be set aside as the memorial to a brave heart that winged its way into the very vital of enemy territory and destroyed military objectives that were calculated to bring harm and destruction to our great country. And whereas it is my honor as mayor to continue the tradition of honoring his legacy. Now, therefore, I, Debbie Nash-King, by the virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Killeen, do hereby proclaim April 18, 2023 as Bob Gray Day.
Thank you. And we're now going to have Mr. Manning come up and speak. He's the third cousin of Bob Gray, and he has a few letters to read from him as well as some remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City of Killeen, and all those people at the airport and all those who have turned out today, and again, Fort Hood. The privilege of speaking is good, but I used to compete. Fred Page, who was his cousin, passed away some years ago, and used to always be here, and we'd always ask him to talk because he grew up with Bob. Bob was his favorite runaround kind of guy, and they had some great stories. He had some great stories, and I always enjoyed those stories. So, some of them are off the record. Like one of the stories that he told was that, and I heard that Bob Gray did fly through downtown Killeen and buzz what is now City Hall, and came close over the top of it. But again, he had some, let's just say before he was enlisted, he may have done some experimental flying, just to see how the aircraft worked. The last time I understand he flew through the area, he said he started to land, but he decided not to land on the highway because it's too windy. So he had some, he had some adventure in him, but when it came to the war and going there, he became a serious grown up and a man who took his efforts seriously, and also I think took the risk seriously. And I'm going to read a couple of letters that were written to the Fred Page family and their father, and then of course Mary, his wife, was always so kind to me, and just like they started coming here in the early days when the statue was being designed. I was on the statue committee, and so we depended on them in those early days to learn about Bob and get to know him. But anyway, I'm just going to read you a couple of letters, portions of a couple of letters, because they show, I always try to show the character and remember the history of who this young man was. And I'm sure, he would be a very interesting man today if he was still around. All of them would be in their hundreds if they were still around. But Bob would have been a part of the community. Anyway, this is a letter he wrote to the Pages while he was still in training in Louisiana before he went overseas. And he says, well, it looks as though First Lieutenant Bob is hitting the road for a while. So you won't be hearing from me. Just finished talking to you, and it sure was great hearing from your voices. I guess they just had a phone call. I can't say where now or when I'm going, but just listen to Walter Winchell from now on, and you will keep up with me. Just remember the 17th, I guess it was Airborne Group, or as it is known now, the B-25 detachment, and you will hear plenty. Don't mention this, but read between the lines. Again, in the days of keeping a secret, I think he kept it, but he was wanting to tell them he was about to do something big. Another flyer, Tarbock, he says, left on a boat the other day for somewhere with 500 nurses on the ship. How is he doing? Wow, I really envy him. Well, I'll sign off now. So be sweet, and I'll be seeing ye. With all my best, Bob. And that was typical the way he signed off his letters. Be seeing ye, and all his best. One more letter, and this is one of my favorites because it was written in September of 1942. It's September 29th, late September. So as you know, he wasn't long for this life, but he had a pretty good perspective even at this time, being a young man. And he's writing to his Uncle Fred. He says, about these chances, you know yourself that cannot be helped. One is just as large as the others. I do not think about it in that way. I know the old man upstairs will keep one eye and one hand on me all the time, so I never give it a thought. When I've done my little on this earth, whether I'm in India, China, or in bed at home, he will call me and I will go. If I do not come back, have no fear or regrets, for I will be with him, I know. So he in fact was poetic in one of his final messages to his family. And then he says, explain this to his folks, his parents, because they don't see it. And of course, parents don't want to look at that part of war and their loved ones going off to war. I had hopes of coming home after 6 months, but it is gone or will be in a couple of days. So I'm setting my mind for a long stay. Keep up the good work of cheering the folks up. I appreciate it very much. When you write Aunt Flora, tell her thanks. Again, he remembers Aunt Nora. He remembers Aunt Nora in this letter. And then he makes a couple other comments and says, was glad to know that you all are doing well. And his uncle was working at the camp, he called it. And then he says, well, Unc, must close. Just keep that firm grip, and I'll be seeing ye, Bob. P.S. Hope to be a captain next month or so. How is that? So, and as we know, he did eventually find out he did become a captain and was a captain at the time of his death. I've been involved in the airport and the city for some years. Back in the 90s, when I was on the city council, the talk of a joint use airport was a bit touchy because not everybody liked the idea. I was going to say I didn't step up and make a big deal because, it had a relative attached to the idea that it would be a joint use. And so I was okay that others who were the opposition eventually got overruled. And what happened was our congressman got involved, and there were some Army top got involved, and eventually it came to pass that it was joint use. The FAA designation for this airport is GRK, and I'm proud of that, and that's fine if that's the way it always stays. The airport is going to have to change its name soon, and as a loyal relative, I wouldn't mind the airport being named Gray Killeen Regional Airport. But again, that's up to the other people, other decisions, and the airport are doing some studies now on the new name. But again, I will say the family is proud to be here, family to be a part of this gathering always, and this hasn't always been remembered. So I would like to say to the mayor and all those mayors going way back to Maureen Jewett and Raul Villaranga, way back when they started recognizing this again and making this a big deal. And it was really around the fact that the statue was erected and that we had a more knowledge and more information about Robert Manning Gray, our hometown hero. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love that history has been preserved for so long. So thank you so much. Let's give another round to the family members and also the friends. We have some friends here of the family. If you could raise your hand or wave your hand, any of the friends of the family. Thank you for helping us just make sure that we keep him on the forefront of our minds as we go forward. We appreciate it. So I'm going to close it out now, unless the family members would like to say anything. Is there any other family members who would like to say anything? I want to make sure. You sure? You sure? Okay. Any friends? We had a couple of friends of the family that wanted to speak at all? No? You sure? Okay. Come on up, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Norlin Rips. I do a great deal of genealogy, and it's interesting how we remember our heroes. Well, one of them that served in World War II is Hart on my mother's side, and so they didn't call him Hubert Hart. He was a cook, so they called him Mama Hart. Can you imagine it? But he was endeared to all the troops because he made cat-eared biscuits from scratch, and that's why they loved him. So you go and think about Robert. Mark said he was adventurous, and that's kind of really an understatement because he was one of those kids you could never say no to, okay? They told him not to fly underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, but he did. They told him not to fly over the Emperor's Palace when they were doing the raid, but he did. But that was Robert. And he took my dad at one point, when you still had steam locomotives here, and they went and got grease from the hardware store that Uncle Marvin owned. So they greased the tracks. Can you imagine that? From what Dad told me, they had to back up the locomotive almost a mile to get the thing to run on the tracks. So this is the kind of stuff that most of our kids get locked up in juvie for now, but that was just Robert. I mean, he had to do something to keep him busy, right? So that's just remembering how we remember different people in our families.
Thank you. So I recently read a tribute, and it listed Captain Bob Gray's Distinguished Flying Cross citation. And as I close it out, I'd like to read it. For extraordinary achievement while participating in a highly destructive raid on the Japanese mainland on April 18, 1942, Lieutenant Gray volunteered for this mission, knowing full well that the chances of survival were extremely remote, and he executed his part with great skill and daring. This achievement reflects high credit on Lieutenant Gray and the military service. Again, we want to thank everyone who was able to join us and just show your respect for this hero and this fallen service member. And I always like to end with this. Robert Gray was part of a chosen few. He lived his life with courage, with confidence, and even with a little comedy. I challenge everyone here to tell someone about Robert Gray today, tomorrow, next week, next month. Never miss an opportunity to share the knowledge and history with someone else, especially our youth. I also want to challenge you to not only remember his legacy, but also think about your own and what you're going to leave on this earth to make it a little better than you found it. Thank you. There is cake and punch if you'd like to partake in over here, cake and punch. Thank you.